All right. Hello, hello, hello. Good evening, everyone. I'm actually live now. Facebook then changed up this process and it's a little bit different now. So I'm not familiar. And it's been a little while since I came and did a Facebook Live and joined you all here. Um, First, let me just start off by introducing myself for those of you who do not know me. My name is Bridget Montgomery, and I am a licensed clinical social worker. I am one of the administrators in this here group, um, and this group have been in existence for a little over 2 years, maybe three now. Uh, I think a little over 3 years. And so we've been doing a really good job with providing support for thousands of social workers that are working toward earning their LMSW, LSW, or LCSW. And this here group have been, really helpful and supportive in helping people get over and get to the next level. Why am I here tonight? And I was debating on whether or not I should just come out and do a study group. I had a lot of people requesting, inboxing me, asking me if I wouldn't mind doing a Facebook Live and going over some practice questions. And, I toiled with that a little bit because I would love to, but the work that it takes, to come out and, present practice questions and work through that with you guys, it takes a lot. And I am right now, like everybody else, getting used to this transition that we're all in and juggling multiple things at one time. And so, with that being said, I haven't had time to kind of sit down and digest a question that I wanted to present to you all. But after reading through the groups and seeing some of the posts and seeing some of the questions that folks had, I thought it was really important that I come out and talk with you a little bit. I wish you guys can see me. If I show myself, I'm not going to be able to share my, excuse me, I'm not going to be able to share my PowerPoint, my talking points. And I don't know what Facebook did this time around, but here we are. If you all can hear me okay, for those of you who are joining in, if you can actually hear me, if you don't mind, it helps me out a whole lot when you can talk back to me. So if you can put in the comment section, I'm here, I can hear you, and I can see your presentation. That would be so helpful. That way I know what I'm doing and if it's okay for me to move forward with what I wanted to share with you guys tonight. So if you can hear me, just let me know that you're able to hear me. Type it in the comment section. Let me know that you can see what's on the screen, and let me know that it's okay to move forward. I'm hoping you guys can hear me. All right, I'll give you a few moments to kind of, hopefully you're not shy. I'll type. All right. Always like for these things to be interactive because it's really hard. At the end of the day, I'm looking at a screen and I'm kind of like talking to myself. So it's really, it kind of make you feel a little silly if you don't have folks talking back. So you guys can help me out by engaging me and talking back to me. Okay, great. I'm beginning to get some comments in the comment section. So thank you so much. So I'm gonna go ahead and move forward, right? So as I already said to some of you, my name is Bridget Montgomery and I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I know y'all see a lot of letters under my name because all those letters signify the credentials that I currently hold, and I'm still working on a few more. So we all know what that MSW have. That's the one thing that we definitely have in common if you're in this group. So the thing that we share in common, if you're in this group, we're all primarily master level social workers or right at the transition of becoming a licensed social worker because we're about to graduate and earn our degree. Some of you might be bachelor's level, but whatever your degree is, we all have that commonality of social workers, right? Um, the LCSW, for those of you who don't know, that in the state of Pennsylvania, that LCSW represents licensed clinical social worker. Some states it might say licensed certified social worker, or a licensed certified social worker or a licensed clinical social worker. At the end of the day, it represents the same thing. That LCSW represents that I'm licensed to practice and work independently, all of which I do. Again, for those of you who do not know me, I do have a private group practice and I have a online tutoring practice. And I also provide supervision. I wrote a book, right? And so, I work for me. And the way that I was able to do that is by really establishing myself as a professional and gaining that license, that LCSW, that gave me the ability to operate independently. That MSNPM, that stands for Master of Social Work, Master of Science in Nonprofit Management. So I also, hold that, in the CSOTS stands for Certified Sex Offender Treatment Specialist. And so I'm actually a national certified sex offender treatment specialist, which means I can treat sex offenders across the United States. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and move on. That's enough about the credentials, but I think I never really did that before, but it was important for me to do that for the purpose of what I want to talk about today, and just really kind of go into the importance of licensure. So let me make sure I do this. So hang in there with me, guys, because I'm learning this whole Facebook thing with the live is so different now. All right. So being an essential worker, right? Notice I got here ethics alive. So we are in, as you all already know, we've heard this multiple times, right? Did my screen change? It looks like my screen did not change for you guys. Are you guys seeing? Okay, there we go. I see it. All right. So being an essential worker, right? So as you all already know, we are living in unprecedented times, right? This is new for all of us. For me, for you, for everybody, right? No one saw this day coming. No one saw this time period coming. I know I certainly didn't. And I know when I stepped out and made the choice and the decision to become a social worker, my whole perspective, my whole thought, and my whole being was like, okay, here it is. I get the chance to make a difference in this world. I get to go out and serve. I get to go out and be a support. I get to go out and help. Now, if I was to be 100% honest, when I first became a social worker, I didn't really understand what that meant, right? I didn't really take that in and really understand the core of what it means to be a social worker. For those of you who followed me and who has, worked with me in the past or anything like that, one thing about me, and one thing I always state, is that I bleed social work. I'm a social worker from the heart, right? So why am I saying that? Why am I putting emphasis on this? Because there's something to say about a social worker. When you're looking at the mental health discipline overall, on a broader spectrum, psychologists, licensed family and marriage therapists, nurse practitioners, yes, I'm gonna throw them in there, licensed practicing counselors, right? We all add to the body, right? We all have something special and unique to add to the body. But when you put a social worker in there, right, the social worker is kind of like so diverse in all of his allness, right? We study the whole person. We understand the whole person in the environment, right? So that part that distinguishes us from the other disciplines is that we don't just either study the mind, or we're not just studying the biology of the person, the makeup of the person that kind of causes them to do X, Y, and Z, or we're not just stuck on or well versed in counseling strategies only, and having that, that one dimension where, the client therapist relationship is all of, just that counseling frame. No, we look at the whole person. We study behaviors, right? We study the environment, right? We look at how culture can impact a person, right? We look at how biology can affect the person. We look at every component of the person and see how all of those different dynamics can impact the way a person think, behave, and feel, right? So that's that CBT part, think, behave, and feel, right? Right? That's what we do. If you're still with me, if you're following me, just talk back to me in the comment section so that way I know I'm making sense, right? And so we're so diverse in what it is that we have to offer and what it is that we have to give, that is, it's essential that you understand the nature of what we are doing. Now, yes, we are living in unprecedented times. Yes, right now we are in a pandemic. Yes, right now our nation is in crisis. And yes, the essential workers are needed. So why am I saying this? The essential workers are needed. So we need more hands on deck. We need more people out there on the front line helping. We need more people out there serving and supporting and helping those who have been directly and indirectly affected by COVID-19. So what does that say about you, the social worker? Now, right now, there's a shortage of just about every type of worker because COVID-19 has not, discriminated against anyone. It has come in, it is taking lives, it is weakening souls, it is breaking up families, it's destroying jobs, it's destroying lives. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on and on. And so with that being said, this is having an impact on the social, emotional, physical, mental, and spiritual components of that individual, of multiple people, right? And as social workers, that's what we do. Now, again, why am I bringing this to this particular group? Yes, there has been some language and some talk about grandfathering in. There's been some language and talk about, getting out there and working and doing the different things. Even if you are not licensed at this particular time, there has been talk about, volunteering your service and going out and doing certain things so that you can help. While all of that is noble, right? All of that is great. This is my personal opinion. I would advise against it. Now, stop, think, process, and then react. That's a core skill that we teach our clients when they're making impulsive decisions, when they're moving and they're acting too fast. Now, I know many of us need jobs, right? Most of us are at risk of losing our job for whatever reason because we haven't got a license or whatever. So there's a lot of different reasons that suggest that, hey, you have to do what you need to do to survive. Yes, but if we're doing that without thinking this all the way through, we're being reactive. And what we're doing is that we're just acting in the moment. All right. Excuse me. My husband just came down. Your food is on the counter. You're just acting in a moment. And what we don't want to do is we don't want to be reactive. We want to be responsible. We want to set the tone. We want to set the mood. We want to, there's going to be a residual effect even after the pandemic has moved on, even after there is a cure that will be able to treat COVID-19, there's still going to be residual effects. And what do I mean by that residual effect? I mean, there are still going to be people who are going to have traumatic effects as a result of losing loved ones, as a result of themselves having contracted and even survived and came through in this scare of their life after losing a child or, losing a job or having to stand hours in long lines just waiting on food, all those different things. And let's not forget those that are serving, right? So let's not forget the ones that are serving and treating the vicarious trauma. Y'all know that word? Y'all know that language? So we're going to have a whole lot of first responders and essential workers that's also going to need us. They're going to need our support. And so what we do not want to do is get out there too quickly without understanding the nature of what it is that we're dealing with, not making sure that we have the technical skill, knowledge, and ability to handle the extent of the work that is necessary and that need to be done, and everything that come along with it. So I implore you, be patient, take your time. So stop. Should I practice without a license? If you're asking yourself that question, then maybe you should rethink it. Now, here's the thing I want you guys to think about. Right now, you practice, you get out there, you're serving, you're working, you're helping on the front line. When all this is done, an order comes back in the way the government wants the order to come back in, what happens then? What happens to the job that you had that you were practicing without a license? Will they maintain you and keep you because you came in on a voluntary basis? The reason why I know what that is stating is because I've been called in by Delaware State, New Jersey State, and Pennsylvania State to work as a volunteer in a backup situation if needed. But here's the difference. I am licensed and I'm able to do that, to volunteer my services to help support. So even when that time is over, I'm still employable, right? I'm still able to work and do my job because I still have my license. So I want to implore you to stop and kind of think about that. Yes, you may be working for the interim for right now, but what happens on the back end? All right. Now, moving from that, we have this thing called telemental health. What exactly is that, right? And so we knew about telemental health. We've been practicing telemental health. We've been using telemental health, but right now it is the primary wave of the world. Whether your children are, doing online schooling because they don't have another choice, whether you're working remotely from home as a case manager, you're calling your clients more often. If you're a counselor or a therapist, you're doing telemental health, you're meeting with your clients via video chat and different things like that. Listen, even with that, there has been leniency. Okay. And that leniency said it's okay to text your clients with your cell phone. It's okay to use Google Hangouts or Facebook, not Facebook, or FaceTime, or any type of video or audio that is not HIPAA compliant. For right now, it's okay for you to use that. Have any of you gotten that in the mail, or have any of your bosses or anybody told you that? I know I get it all the time because I deal with insurances and I deal with clients, all of which I have to see them telemental health. But the government, the states have released and said that it's okay to use whatever form you have to use to reach your clients and to work with them. It's okay. We've been taught by our code of ethics, the ASW Code of Ethics, the National Association of Social Work Boards Code of Ethics, that we always want to consider the client's personal health information. We need to protect that. We need to abide by our code of ethics no matter what is being stated. And some people are moving too hastily. What happens on the back end after all is said and done? I want you guys to consider that, okay? So with the telemental health, just because there's leniency, just because there's temporary laws saying it's okay to practice this way or to do this thing, think about it. Do you want to put your license at risk on the back end? Because we don't know what could happen or what could transpire or who can say what or what kind of information could have or would have been leaked if we're using those open forums, right? For example, last week, Zoom, a well-known, a very popular video client, had leaked information, personal information about a person on Facebook. Okay. Not only that, they also had people just busting in on on your sessions and different things like that, because there wasn't no safety blockers, or there wasn't anybody protecting or guarding the video clients, right? And so we got to be careful of all that. We got to think about that. Who's recording what, who's taking pictures, who's grabbing information, and then what happens later if somebody want to disseminate that information. So think about that, guys, okay? The other one, operate within your scope of practice. We're not exempt. The other danger about going ahead and practicing without a license is this within your scope. Our code of ethics reminds us that we should never practice without outside of the scope of our, of our practice. Have you been trained in crisis management? Have you been trained in, dealing with trauma? Have you been trained? There's a whole lot of different things that you have to consider in terms of, do you actually have the training to work in this particular area, in this particular specialized area? So make sure that you're always operating within your scope of practice. And then the last part, which I've been saying over and over and over again, pay attention to your NASW code of ethics. This is what governs us. It doesn't tell us what we need to do or what we should do or how we should do it, but it is a practical guideline that gives us helpful information that helps us understand how we should operate as social workers, as professional social workers, being ethical in everything that we do. Never, veering away from the fact that we need to be ethical and that we need to take our practice and how it is that we serve our clients into consideration. We always need to put the needs of our clients first. We always have to remember the right to clients' I'm tripping over my own words. The client's right to self-determination, and we always need to become comfortable and remember and cognizant of protecting their health information. And so this was really something that I kind of wanted to bring to you guys, and I was really passionate about and just thought about how important it is for us to kind of think about these kinds of things. It's important to me. Now, to each his own, right? At the end of the day, we're always going to make our own decision. We're always going to choose our path, and we're always going to choose what makes sense to us. I'm sharing for me what I chose to do for me and why I chose to do it this way for me. And so I just wanted to share this with you all, not saying that this is what you need to do, but sharing that I want you to kind of consider, think about, and reflect on what you feel like you should do for you. And at the end of the day, I pray that whatever choice and whatever decision you make is the best choice and decision you make for you and for your family. Now that I got all that out the way, let's move on to the next slide. All right. Hopefully this will change along with me. All right. So we talked about being an essential worker. Now, for those of you who've already been through the process of studying, or you're new to this process and you're trying to move on, just wanted to kind of give you some tips and some pointers in how to make that happen. Okay. So now let's move on and talk a little bit about the ASWB, the exam. What is this about? What does it look like? What's the setup? What's the process, right? So for those of you who do not know, there are 4 levels of the exam, right? We have the bachelor's, we have the master's, we have the advanced generalist, and we have the clinical. And I know people are often confused, like, what's the difference, right? And which exam should I take? Now, for the bachelor's, the only time you're taking the bachelor's level is if you are a bachelor's level social worker. If you are a master's level, you're looking at either the master's, the advanced, or the clinical. Now, do you have to take the clinical exam? No, you do not. That's the last level. It is the highest level, and it is the level that you want to take if you want to practice independently. Depending on the type of job that you do, where you're stationed in terms of your work site, If your position requires you to have a LCSW, then that's a little bit different. But for most states, you need to be a licensed social worker. Now, let me explain what that means. Every state might label that a little bit different. Some call it LMSW, licensed master social worker. Some states LSW, licensed social worker. Some states don't use the C, and some states might just have LMSW. And in that state, based on that state, if that LMSW represents being an independent worker, then you're an independent worker. But I believe every single state have to have in there a C somewhere, so that C might come at the end and not in the beginning. The C signifies that you are able to work independently. Some other states have LICSW, so licensed independent clinical social worker, right? And so at the end of the day, the license that you basically want to make sure you have is that licensed social worker. This is the license that you can take fresh out of your master's program, not out of college, out of your master's program. You could take this exam. You need this exam to be considered a social worker. Outside of that, you're a master's level. But in order to be considered a professional social worker, you need to carry that license. Now, there's a lot of different debates because people have been serving in the capacity of a social worker, put in many, many years out in the field, serving and doing certain things. And so they feel as though, I've been out here and I served my time. So, I am a social worker and I should earn that title. Now, I understand that. So when we're talking about that, talking about how many years of service you put out there and how much time you put out there working post-master's degree, that's where you get that language grandfathering in, okay? Because they served in the capacity of a social worker for multiple years. And so these people are being grandfathered in. And then you have some folks who get a provisional license. And so that provisional license is basically there to allow folks to work in the capacity of a licensed social worker while they're working on getting their hours under a licensed professional, whether that's a licensed professional social worker, a licensed psychologist, or a licensed, I don't know if it's a licensed practicing counselor as well, as you're working on getting your hours and you're serving under that capacity. And so this is how, those levels work, and this is what they mean, and this is why it's important, because when you think about all the various professions out there, all the professions have licensure, and this license, what it does is it qualifies you. It doesn't define you. There's a difference between defining who you are and qualifying the work that you do. And that qualification says that you have met the basic minimum standards that is required to be considered a social worker. So it's kind of like the stamp of approval to say, yes, this individual have the qualifications or have the knowledge, the skill, and the ability to perform the basic duties of a social worker. I hope that makes sense. And so it's really important for you to kind of understand that. And it's really important for you when you're thinking about why are you taking this exam, to understand what it is that you're doing and why it is that you're doing. So the clinical license, as I said, it is the highest level of licensing. And upon receiving that, it's going to afford you the ability to be able to practice independently and enjoy different insurance panels, right? And so being able to get on different insurance panels is where, it become a little bit more lucrative for you as an independent practitioner. When you're taking the clinical exam versus the generalist exam, the difference here is that the clinical exam is going to go more in depth with analytical and reasoning skills and diagnosing. And the reason that is because as a clinician, as a practitioner, with that LCSW, you are now at the level where you can write diagnoses that will be approved by insurance and reimburse for your professional assessment or evaluation of a particular behavior or a mental disorder. So, yes, it is important that you understand this. And yes, it is important that you get that license, because what it does is it's qualifying you. Okay. It's saying that you understand how the diagnostic manual works, you understand the matrix, and when it comes to making diagnoses, you understand the difference in behaviors and how, the differential diagnosis, how they work together, how one behavior could look like another, and what something presents like. Okay, so all this stuff is really important. And so don't dumb that down. All right. Um, it does something different in terms of the type of people that you can work with, and who, insurance company will look at you and say, okay, this is a vulnerable population. We understand that, as a social worker, she has the training, she has the skill, she have the know-how to work with this vulnerable population. And so, yes, we could put her on a job and reimburse her. That's where that whole Medicare part comes in. When it comes to licensed clinical social workers and licensed practicing counselors, the licensed clinical social workers are those that can work with Medicare, and licensed practicing counselors are not able to do that at this time. I just wanted to make that distinction and point that out for you, so you can kind of understand that this is a big thing, right? And you should want to work really hard to get that. All right. So when we're thinking about taking the exam, what are some points, some pointers that I want to throw at you, some things that I want you to consider as you begin to study, as you begin to practice these practice questions, and as you begin to, just kind of sit down and begin to digest what it is that you're taking into consideration. There's so many different practice questions that's being recycled all around Facebook, right? And it's easy to come across questions that are similar, or some that you quite possibly read before. So even if that's the case, right, what I want you to keep in mind as you begin to start exploring these practice questions and working on them, I want you to remember that every single question you see should be treated like it's a question that you've seen for the very first time. And the reason why I'm saying that to you is because one word can transition the entire vignette and give you a different perspective of what's going on, give you a different outlook just because of that one word. Okay. Your job as a social worker is to be able to hear what's going on, assess the nature of the situation, apply the appropriate technique, and assist the client with working through that problem. So if you are approaching each question as if it is a client, and this is the first time that you've come in contact with this client for, and you've never heard their situation before, and you're treating them, as you should, as a unique individual with their own unique issue and problem, then you can sift through what's actually going on, find the identified problem, and then help with identifying a solution to help the client work on that problem. So the big key point here is, no matter how many times you may have seen a question, or how many times you've come across a question and it may be similar, treat it as if it's the first time you've ever come across that question. See it as if it's a client, the first time you've ever met this client, knowing that every single client you have, you need to treat them as individuals and not compare them to any client that you had before, or that have a similar issue, and you're going to work on their problem the same way that you worked on that other client's problem who had a similar issue. Nope. Independent, and they should be treated as such. Okay. So keep that in mind. Always, always, always treat every question as if it's the first time you've ever come across it before. Refrain from thinking about what you've done in other situations, or how you would do this if you were at work, or comparing the questions that you're reading to how you actually operate and do things on the job, right? Refrain from doing that, because what has happened, we've developed we've developed a systemic way of doing things, right? We get out there, sometimes we just move off of gut, off of intuition, and we're just kind of going, and not really thinking about what it is that we're doing, why we're doing it, and how we're doing it, and what's the cause behind what it is that we're doing. And so you get to these questions, and these questions have been designed specifically to make you think about what you're doing, not the practice questions that you're seeing floating around Facebook, or you're getting from from the practice manuals that you bought. Now they're there to help strengthen your thinking, but I'm talking about the ASWB, the real test questions themselves, right? They are created to make you really think about what it is that you're doing and why, and it's done purposefully and intentfully. So what you need to do is refrain from thinking about how you actually practice, and begin to think how to practice in terms of theory. What makes sense, why this research says this is the best evidence-based practice to use in this particular situation, etc., etc. I can go on and on. When you're with those practice questions, always focus on the scenario that's given to you, and just look for just look at the 4 answer choices that's given, and don't try to look outside of that. Okay, so you have your vignette, you have your practice questions, and you have 4 answer choices. Your job is to find the best of the 4 that's in front of you. Now, I'm going to tell you this, and I'm quite sure you all already know there's a plethora of ways that you can answer any of these questions, because we're all different, right? We all have a very different way of analyzing, assessing the situation. And so we may operate on the problem very different. So what you want to do is you want to refrain from trying to think outside of that. Look at your vignette, stay focused on that question, and then concentrate just on the 4 that's in front of you. And notice, I am not going to say choose the correct answer, because there is no correct answer, but choose the best answer. Choose the best of the 4, the one that actually answers what the problem is, or have the answer to what the question is asking. All right, almost there. I call this slide Universal Design for Learning. And I say universal design for learning is because that's just it. We all learn very differently. We all have our strong points. We all have our weak points. Some of us are really good test takers. Some of us are just horrible. Me, myself, I am horrible when it comes to test taking, and I hate taking tests. And because of that, when it comes time to take a test, there's different things that I need to do to make sure that I'm not just memorizing information so I could kind of try to regurgitate that back, but I go into work hard to make sure that I am internalizing it. I'm taking it. I'm taking in the information that's in front of me, that I'm making the connections, that I'm able to apply it across the board to other situations or other disciplines, right? And I can see situations, and I can make the connection to how that relates to this. And so for me, it's important that I utilize a variety of different things to help me study and understand that material. And so I encourage you not to focus on how this person does what they do to understand what it is that they need to understand, but to find your learning style, your unique learning style, what works for you. And when you find what works for you, make sure you hold on to that. Now, at this stage of learning, as adult learners, we are far past rote memory. We should not be studying to memorize, because we're far past that. We should be studying to internalize, and I can't stress that enough. Okay. And so with that being said, here are some tips, right? What I want you to do is make sure that you find a balance between studying and absorbing the information. There's so much information that you could take in, and your brain just can't handle it all just at one time. So as you're studying, you need to give yourself some time to rest on the information that you've taken in, to understand it, to give it time to kind of marinate, right? And then you can kind of come back, and when you see it again, if you're able to dialogue about that, then that suggests that you've taken in that information and you got a good understanding of it. We cannot talk about this enough. Self-care, right? Self-care is key. Self-care doesn't mean the same thing for everybody. So you have to really do what works for you. And that means taking time to take care of yourself through this process. You have to be sensible, you have to be realistic, and you have to make sure you got some downtime. And the reason why I say that, again, because we can do an overkill. We can get so involved and so engaged and so much in this trying to study and, going to this person for information, going to this person for that information, having this book and having this course and having that course and having this tutor and that tutor. And there's an overkill, and we're taking in so much information to the point of not learning anything. And too much of anything, we've talked about before, and I know you heard people say this before, too much of anything is never a good thing. Okay, so I want you to think about that as well. Make studying fun and creative, right? If it's a job, if it's something that you must do, or if it's a means to an end, then getting through this process is going to be very, very challenging, very, very difficult. Because think about it. Anytime you have to do something, look at how hard it is. Look at how difficult it is. But when you see it as something that, hey, look, this is a stepping stone to where I'm trying to go, or this is just the beginning of my why, right? If you have a purpose, if you have a reason, if you have a goal in mind, then this is just more than just sitting there studying some information just to get a license so I don't lose my job, or just to get a license just so I can get out there and get a job. We all need to work. I am not. Please, I hope I didn't say that wrong. I am not downplaying the fact that we need a job and that we have to work. That is not what I'm saying. So if it came across like that, I apologize. What I am saying is that any one of y'all know there's a difference between having a career and a job. A career is something you love. A career is something you do. A career is something you get up and you look forward to going to, right? This is your life. This is who you are. A job, sometimes we dread. Sometimes we hate getting up and going. Sometimes we got to think about, oh my God, I got to do this again. I am so blessed and I am so fortunate to have a career that I love. And I get to get up every day and do work and not feel like I'm doing work, but I feel like I'm doing my life purpose. There's nothing more fulfilling in the world than to be able to earn a living doing what your passion is. And so I implore you to make sure that, before you go after this thing, you make sure you identify your why. Why is it that you're doing? Remember, as I already said multiple times, we study to internalize and not to memorize. When you're internalizing, you're connecting with the information and it becomes a part of you. It is not stored in your memory through rote memorization, but you found a way to make a connection with the material you learned. And that is so important. You have to think clinical and assign or attach the principles or theories of what you're learning to everyday life situations. Think clinical. Assign or attach the principles of the theories of what you're learning, what you're studying to every day. So make the connections, right? You can make a game out of it. You can diagnose characters on TV, right? I don't know if any of you ever watched Game of Thrones. Most of you probably did. Some of you probably didn't. But that's an awesome saga that you can watch. And almost all those characters, right? You can diagnose those characters, right? Another one is TV sitcom. If you don't have a paid movie channel, a CV sitcom, This Is Us. Oh my goodness. If any of you have watched This Is Us, you know what I'm talking about. Every last one of those characters can be diagnosed. I can diagnose each and every last one. You got alcoholism, you got let me see, alcohol, you got OCD, you got control issues, you got you know, overeating, you got all kinds of stuff that's going on This Is Us. And you can really have fun, kind of looking at diagnosing behaviors, giving a DSM-5 diagnosis or whatever. And they're just two examples of two different TV shows that you can, kind of look at and make a game out of it. But, choose your own. Don't diagnose your family. Don't diagnose your friends. Stay away from your spouse. Don't diagnose your spouse or your partner or your significant other. All those different things can be really dangerous. As far as defense mechanisms, same thing. You can find defense mechanisms in almost any conversation, right? You'll hear people talking and that avoidance thing, the projection thing comes out, right? The scapegoat, anything, right? You can hear people talking and you can hear those, those things come out. Make mental notes, write those kinds of things down on your notepad, and then, kind of like connect them with the defense mechanism that you've been studying. Or if you see it on TV and you hear someone or you see someone using a defense mechanism, write that down. This is how you're connecting with the information and it's beginning to make sense. All right. You can always check out a few podcasts, watch or listen to any TED Talks. I'm a TED Talk junkie. And of course, me. You can subscribe to my YouTube channel and check out some of my videos. I'm not as well versed as some of those folks out there, but I've been told that my YouTube videos have helped quite a few people pass their exam. So there you have it. You can check out some of my YouTube videos. There are so many alternative ways of gaining knowledge and understanding through the use of everyday situations. And so when you're able to do that, my friends, this is suggesting that you have internalized what you're studying, right? You just have to find what works, and it just have to make sense to you. These are just some examples that I'm just throwing out there to be helpful. And lastly, I would say, give yourself no more than 10 practice questions a day. I actually say 5. When I tutor, I don't give any more than 5 questions. So we'll work through 5 questions. That's if we could get through those 5 questions in 1 hour, because the idea is not really about reading the question and finding the answer, but it's about reading the question, identifying the best choice, and then understanding why that choice fit and the other 3 do not. And so if you're taking your time to do that and really see the rationale behind it, then 10 questions would be a lot to work through. But if you get into the habit of doing that and understanding your reasoning, the application, and the why behind, then you're really, really putting yourself in position and allowing yourself to be able to answer these questions that the ASWB has designed for you. Okay. All right. Last one. Give me about 10 more minutes for all of you who hung in there with me. I really appreciate you. And thank you for listening. I just got some final suggestions and some recommendations that I want to give. And then after that, give you about 5 minutes. If you have any questions to ask me, then you can write them in the comment section, and I'll do my best with trying to answer any of the questions that I see come up. But for now, let's just go ahead and rock out and end this portion with some final suggestions and recommendations. So if I could offer anything, I say practice exams are not like the real exam. So don't be hard on yourself. The purpose of the practice exam is to get your mind in motion, to help you think more strategically and analytically with higher order thinking strategies. There's only one true practice exam, and that comes close to the actual ASWB exam, and that's the practice exam that you get off of the ASWB website. And I think it costs like $80 or $85. I don't even remember what it costs, but that's the only practice test out there that is going to bring you the closest to the actual exam. It's a simulation of what the real exam is like. And I would highly recommend that you take that exam if you can save the money and put that to the side. But I would highly recommend that you take that exam at least 30 days before you test. Sit down, take the whole exam within the 4-hour time frame given, and then for the next 30 days, review all 170 questions one by one, slowly, methodically, and intentionally. Because what that does is that will help you get a good sense and a good understanding for how the ASWB designed their questions and what their thinking is behind the type of questions that they ask and their rationale. So read the rationales as well. So I would highly, highly, highly recommend that you do that at least 30 days before you actually test. Okay. Um, what I got here. So last thing, you want to circle and highlight. So when you're going back through the test and you're answering the questions, you want to make sure you circle or highlight the words that are defining words for you that distinguish the difference between what your thinking was and what their thinking was. I said theirs, what their thinking was. So basically, if you answered the question wrong and you go back and you look at what the right answer was, kind of compare what you were thinking as opposed to what the rationale was that they gave you, and then highlight the word that make that distinction for you, that help you understand, oh, okay, that makes sense, so this is what they were doing. And then do some further research to kind of clarify that a little bit more for you. So Google is your friend. Do not be afraid of Mr. Google, and go and take that extra step to kind of munch on that information and then reflect on it. Reflect. Don't forget to reflect. At least 2 days before your exam, you want to make sure you start your self-care practice. Unwind, focus, work on managing your anxiety. Deep breathing is a gift from God. Don't be afraid to, do that controlled deep breathing kind of thing. It really relaxes you and help you to, rid yourself of any of those stressors. Aromatherapy might work for some people. You have all kinds of scented oils. Some people use sage, some people use lavender, burning candles, whatever it is to kind of help you relax. Yoga, some exercising, nice, warm bath, showers, whatever. But, right before it's time to take the exam, you want to start working on that relaxation part, that de-stressing part, because you don't want to take that anxiety into the testing center with you. Make sure you eat a balanced meal. Have a nice dinner before bed. Get into bed at a decent hour. Get up in the morning, have breakfast. Make sure you eat. Make sure your belly is filled. Drink some water and make sure you relieve yourself before you go into this testing center, so you just don't have anything distracting you to break you away from focusing on that exam. I'll also say watch your favorite television show or listen to your favorite song, or do something that's all about you the night before. Do not open up the book and try to cram and study and get those last minute things on, because what will happen if you come across something and you're like, oh my gosh, I forgot this, you're going to get yourself all worked up again. Do not try to study right before you go into the exam room, because that is not going to be helpful. At the end of the day, right, the most important thing that I want you to know and I want you to understand is that no matter what you're studying or what material you're using to study, or how many different study materials you have, the content is not going to change. So you do not need to spend so much money purchasing all these different things in hopes that you're going to get something different. The information remains the same. What changes is people's technique or style of teaching the material. That's the only thing that's going to change. Everybody is different in terms of how they deliver the information. What's important is that you find what works for you. Know that content doesn't change. Take care of yourself and know that you are a star and you will do what you need to do and you will pass. Don't give up. Keep the faith and hang tight. That's all I got for you folks. You hung in there with me for a whole hour. I don't believe I talked for a whole hour. Um, but there you have it. I'm done. If anybody have any questions, if you want to type it up in the comment section, I'll wait for about a minute or so. And you could just go ahead and put it in the comment section. I'll try to do my best to answer if I can. And if I can't, then try to refer you to where, I think you might be able to get the answer. All right. Pleasant, you're welcome. Thank